Welcome to my course, Game Development Basics, Week 5, Lesson 8, Creating a Health Component. The objectives for this lesson are to create a health component, and then we'll set up destroying enemy ships and player ships. Before I get started though, I just want to do a little bit of project cleanup. Our BP Chaser will follow after the player, but there's still one weird thing, and that's that it's constantly looking forward, and this isn't exactly what I want for my game. So I've created this function here on the event tick. The first thing we're going to do is check if the player variable is valid. If it's not, we'll do nothing. But if it is, we'll call setWorldRotation on the arrow, which is the base component of our enemy. And then we'll use the findLookAtRotation node, which takes two inputs, a start and a target. And for the start, we'll use this actor's world location, and for the target, we'll use the player's world location. And we'll plug that into the new rotation. Now our darter enemy is constantly looking at the player, and this looks much more natural. But when we interact with one of these ships, nothing happens at the moment. We need to set it up so that when the player shoots a ship, or if the ship collides with the player, it causes damage. And for this, we're going to create a health component that we can put on both actors to handle some of the functionality. To start, here in my blueprints folder, I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this components. And in here, I want to create a blueprint class, and I want to select actor component. I'm going to call this BP health component. And here in my BP health component, I want to create two variables. The first one is going to be called maximum health. And this is going to be an integer. I want to create a second one called current health. And for the maximum health, let's start by setting it at 5, just for testing. Now on begin play, we want to set current health, and we'll set this to whatever the maximum health is. Now I want to create a function called damage processing. So I'll create a new function, and it's going to be called damage processing. And this will take an input of an integer called damage. So we want to get our current health, and we want to subtract the incoming damage. And then we want to set this as our new current health. This means that whenever we take damage, we'll subtract it from our current health, and then that becomes the current health. And the last thing we want to do is check if this is less than or equal to 0. If our current health is 0 or less than 0, we want to set up a new function to destroy that ship. So let's create a return node, and we'll drag this into our return node, and I just want to call this boolean is dead. First, let's implement this onto our enemy base. One of the things we want to do is on our static mesh, let's enable collision. And we're going to set this to overlap all. So here on our enemy base, let's implement this new component. And here in our event graph, let's right click and type any damage, and we'll get the any damage event. Now if we drag and get a reference to our health component and type damage processing, we can get access to this function, and we can drag the damage float into our damage integer to use the damage processing function. We'll create a branch here, and if we are dead, for now, we'll just destroy the actor. So now our enemy base ship is set up to take damage, but currently we don't have anything set up to apply damage. We'll do this through our projectile base. So here in the projectile base, we'll use the begin overlap, and this other actor is the actor that we've overlapped with. So we can do a check to see if it's an enemy and then apply some damage if it is. If we drag off this and type enemy, we can cast to enemy base. And then as the enemy base, we can use the apply damage function. And let's start by applying 1 damage. And we can actually drag off and promote this to a variable called base damage. Now, when our projectiles hit the ship, it'll apply damage. And when we've applied 5, it'll destroy the ship. So now our projectiles are set up to do damage to the ships, and the ships are set up to take the damage. When they've taken enough damage to be destroyed, we call destroy actor. Now on player ship, let's implement the health component. So on our player ship, let's create the any damage event again. And we'll do the same way we did it on the enemy ship. But with this, we don't just want to destroy the ship. In a future lesson, we're going to set it up so that it'll respawn a new ship for the player. And we want to set up that the player would have a certain number of lives to complete each level. We'll set this up in a future lesson, so for now, let's just create a print string as a placeholder. So now the player's ship is set up to take damage, but we want to be able to apply damage to it from the enemy ships. So here in my enemy base, we're going to use the actor begin overlap. And similar to how we did on the projectile, we want to cast this to player ship. And as player ship, we want to apply damage. And again, we can set base damage up as a variable called base damage. And for now, we'll just set it up to do 1 damage. And after we apply that damage, we want to destroy the actor. So in our game so far, all of the actors will be kamikaze type actors that when they come in contact with a ship, they'll apply damage to the ship and then destroy themselves. And just for testing, I'm going to put a print string on our damage processing event right after we set the new health, just so we can keep track of how much health our player ship would have. And we can see if we come in contact with one ship, we'll have 4 health and then 3 health. So now we've created our health component and we have a damage processing function on that health component. We've implemented this component into our enemy base class and our player ship class. And we've set up our projectile base to apply damage when it comes in contact with an enemy. We've also set up the enemy so that when it overlaps with the player ship, it'll apply damage and then destroy itself. So the core of our game is really starting to come together. But for a game like this, we want to be able to spawn multiple ships into the world. And this is what we're going to handle in the next lesson.